The Zephyrian war machine had conquered 17 star systems in the past decade, their crystalline ships cutting through space like shards of death. Admiral Kefvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Absolute Dominion, watching another human colony burn on the viewscreen below. His 6 arms moved with practiced efficiency across the command interface, each gesture bringing more destruction to the planet's surface. The humans had been the galaxy's newest species when first contact occurred 50 years ago. Weak, fragile beings with soft skin and limited lifespans. The Galactic Council had welcomed them with the condescending patience reserved for primitive species. They were given a small sector of space, some outdated technology, and the promise of protection under galactic law. Kefvar's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his people. Protection. The galaxy's established powers had grown soft and complacent. The Zephyrians had evolved on a world of constant warfare, where only the strongest survived. Their chitinous exoskeletons could deflect most energy weapons, their reflexes were faster than any organic being had a right to be, and their tactical minds had been honed by millions of years of evolutionary pressure. When the Zephyrian Empire decided to expand beyond their home cluster, the Galactic Council had tried to intervene. The result was swift and decisive. The combined fleets of 12 species had been crushed in the Battle of Kepler's Gate. The Council's remaining forces had retreated to their core worlds, leaving the Outer Rim territories defenseless. The humans had been among the first to fall. Admiral, his tactical officer hissed through their breathing apparatus. The orbital defenses have been neutralized. Ground forces report minimal resistance. Kefvar studied the tactical display. New Terra, they called this world. Population of 12 million humans, mostly farmers and miners. Their defense fleet consisted of 3 outdated cruisers that had been vaporized within minutes of the Zephyrian arrival. Their planetary shields had lasted barely an hour against the Absolute Dominion's siege cannons. "Begin the harvesting protocol," he commanded. The humans would make adequate slave labor for the mining operations in the Proxima system. Those too old or weak would be eliminated efficiently. It was the Zephyrian way. As his forces descended to the planet's surface, Kefvar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. In another decade, perhaps 2, the entire galaxy would bow before Zephyrian might. The other species would learn their place in the new order, or they would be eliminated. Evolution in action. The communication array chimed with an incoming transmission. Kefvar gestured for his communications officer to accept it. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a human face. Male, unremarkable features, brown hair cropped short in the military style some humans favored. What caught Kefvar's attention were the eyes, cold, calculating, utterly without fear. "Admiral Kefvar of the Zephyrian Empire," the human said, his voice steady despite the destruction raining down on his world. "I am Commander Marcus Chen of the Terran Defense Force." "You are Commander Chen of a broken fleet orbiting a conquered world," Kefvar replied, his universal translator converting his clicks and hisses into human speech. "Surrender, and your death will be quick." Chen's expression didn't change. "I'm calling to inform you that your war against humanity ends today." The bridge fell silent. Several of Kefvar's officers made sounds of amusement, but the Admiral studied the human's face more carefully. There was something in those eyes, something that made his combat instincts tingle with unease. "Amusing," he said finally. "Your species has been fleeing before our advance for 3 years. Your homeworld of Earth fell 6 months ago. Your government is scattered to the stellar winds, and your people serve as our slaves. What could you possibly do to threaten the Zephyrian Empire?" "We've been studying you," Chen said simply. "Learning. Adapting. You see, Admiral, you made a mistake when you conquered Earth. You underestimated us. You thought we were just another weak species to be enslaved or eliminated. You were wrong." Kefvar's primary arms gestured dismissively. "Human bravado. Your species excels at pointless defiance in the face of inevitable defeat. It changes nothing." "Earth had a population of 8 billion, Chen continued, as if the Admiral hadn't spoken. "When your forces took our homeworld, you killed 7 billion of us. You thought you were crushing our spirit. Instead, you taught us something valuable. And what lesson could our superiority possibly teach your inferior species? That mercy is a luxury we could no longer afford. The transmission cut off abruptly. Kefvar stared at the empty hologram for a moment before dismissing it with a gesture. Human psychological warfare, nothing more. Their species was known for their stubborn refusal to accept defeat, even in hopeless situations. It was both admirable and pathetic. Admiral, his sensor operator called out, voice tight with confusion. I'm detecting an anomalous reading. Something is approaching the fleet. Clarify. It's small. Roughly the size of a shuttle. No energy signature, no propulsion that I can detect. It's just drifting toward us. Kefvar moved to the sensor station, his multiple eyes studying the readings. The object was indeed tiny compared to his massive fleet. If it was some sort of human weapon, it was laughably inadequate. His flagship alone massed over 50 million tons and bristled with enough firepower to crack a moon. Probably debris from their orbital stations, he decided. Ignore it and continue the operation. But something nagged at him. The human commander's words echoed in his mind. The tone of absolute certainty, the lack of fear in the face of overwhelming force. In his long military career, Kefvar had learned to trust his instincts. Right now, those instincts were screaming danger. Actually, he said, turning back to his tactical officer. Destroy it. I want that object vaporized. Yes, Admiral. Point defense systems are targeting, wait. The officer's hands moved frantically across his console. I've lost the target. Explain. It's gone, sir. Not destroyed, gone. As if it never existed. Kefvar felt the first stirrings of genuine unease. In all his years of warfare, he had never encountered technology that could simply vanish from sensors. The humans possessed no such capabilities. Their technology was primitive by galactic standards, barely more advanced than chemical rockets when first contact was made. Expand the sensor sweep. Find it. For the next several minutes, his crew conducted an intensive search of the surrounding space. The mysterious object had simply disappeared without a trace. No energy discharge, no debris field, nothing to indicate its fate. Sir, his communications officer interrupted. We're receiving another transmission. It's coming from inside the ship. Impossible. The Absolute Dominion's hull was impregnable, its security systems the most advanced in the galaxy. Nothing could penetrate their defenses undetected. Put it through. The holographic display activated, showing the same human commander. But now he wasn't on the bridge of a ship, he was standing in what looked like a corridor aboard the Absolute Dominion itself. Impossible, Kefvar breathed. Your ship's interior design is quite impressive, Shin said, seemingly oblivious to the Admiral's shock. Though I have to say, the security is somewhat lacking. How did you get aboard my ship? The same way my people have been getting aboard all your ships for the past 6 months. We learned your weaknesses, Admiral. Every species has them. Even apex predators. Warning klaxons began blaring throughout the bridge. Red lights flashed as his security chief's voice echoed through the comm system. Security breach on Deck 7. Unknown intruder has neutralized 6 guard units. All security teams respond immediately. Kefvar's 4 secondary arms flew to his weapon harnesses. This was impossible. No human could single-handedly fight through Zephyrian security forces. His people were stronger, faster, more heavily armed and armored. You're one human against a crew of 10,000, he snarled into the communicator. Even if you somehow manage to board my ship, you cannot possibly one human? Chen's image tilted his head slightly. Admiral, who said anything about one human? The lights on the bridge flickered and died. Emergency illumination cast everything in a hellish red glow as more alarms joined the cacophony. His tactical officer was shouting readings that made no sense. Multiple breaches throughout the fleet. Every ship reports intruders. Security teams are going down faster than they can respond. Engineering reports critical systems are being sabotaged. Kethvar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: fear. Real, primal fear that cut through his military training and spoke to the deepest parts of his predator brain. The humans had somehow infiltrated his entire fleet simultaneously. Impossible, but happening nonetheless. "You want to know what you taught us, Admiral?" Chen's voice echoed from speakers throughout the bridge as his image continued to walk calmly through the ship's corridors. "You taught us that the galaxy is a cruel place. That only the strong survive. That mercy is weakness." The Admiral watched in horror as his security forces engaged the intruder. The feed from their helmet cameras showed a figure in black combat armor moving through the corridors like death incarnate. The humans had always been dismissed as physically inferior, but this one moved with inhuman speed and precision. Zephyrian warriors who could shred steel with their bare claws were falling before weapons that shouldn't have been able to penetrate their natural armor. "You taught us that to survive, we needed to become something more than we were," Chen continued. "So we did. We enhanced ourselves. We discarded weakness. We embraced the void." "What are you?" Kethvar whispered. "We are what you made us. We are the survivors of Earth. We are the children of the murdered billions. We are the inheritors of a broken world who learned to break worlds in return." The bridge shuddered as explosions rocked the ship's superstructure. On the tactical display, Kethvar watched his proud fleet begin to die. Ships that had conquered star systems were going dark one by one, their crews unable to stop the human infiltrators who had somehow bypassed every defense. "This is impossible," he said again, but his voice lacked conviction now. "You're right," Chen agreed. 6 months ago, this would have been impossible. But we've had time to prepare. Time to study your technology, your tactics, your biology. Time to become what we needed to become." The Admiral's mandibles clicked rapidly in distress. "Even if you destroy my fleet, the Empire has hundreds of others. Thousands of worlds. You cannot fight us all. Can't we?" The human's image smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression Kethvar had ever seen. "Admiral, you're operating under a false assumption. You think this is the beginning of our counterattack. You're wrong." "What do you mean?" "This is the end of it." The main display flickered to life, showing a real-time map of the Zephyrian Empire. Red dots marked the locations of major fleet concentrations, key military installations, population centers, industrial worlds. As Kethvar watched in growing horror, the red dots began changing to green. One by one, then, in groups, then, in massive waves across the entire galaxy. "Impossible," he breathed. "You couldn't have coordinated an attack on that scale." "The logistics alone would be impossible for most species," Shen agreed. "But we aren't most species anymore. We're humans. And we've learned to think like you." The bridge's main support beam groaned and cracked. Through the viewports, Kethvar could see his fleet burning around him. Ships that had seemed invincible just minutes ago were now drifting hulks leaking atmosphere and bodies into the void. "You called us weak," the human continued. "Fragile. Limited. And you were right. We were all those things. But we learned. We adapted. We became stronger. And, in the process, we discovered something wonderful about our species." "What?" Kethvar asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "We learned that there's no limit to how creative humans can be when it comes to killing things that threaten their families." The Admiral felt his ship dying around him. His crew was gone, his fleet was gone, and, according to the tactical display, his entire civilization was being systematically dismantled by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive and weak. The galaxy's apex predator, Chen mused as his image walked onto the bridge itself, somehow having penetrated the most secure area of the ship. "That's what you called yourselves. You were right, for a while. You were the apex predator." Past tense. Kefvar reached for his personal sidearm, but found his arms wouldn't respond. Some sort of neural disruptor, probably. The human had come prepared. "What do you want?" he managed. "Justice for 8 billion dead. Peace for the survivors. And to make sure that no species ever again makes the mistake of thinking humans are weak." The bridge lights failed completely, leaving only the emergency illumination and the cold stars outside. In the red-tinged darkness, Shin stepped closer to the Admiral's command throne. "Your empire ends today," the human said quietly. "Your fleets are burning. Your worlds are falling. Your people are learning what it means to face an enemy that has nothing left to lose." "You're monsters," Kefvar whispered. Shen nodded slowly. "Yes. We are. You made us that way. Congratulations, Admiral. You successfully turned a peaceful species into something that makes your worst nightmares look like pleasant dreams." Through the viewport, Kefvar watched the last of his escort ships explode in brilliant flashes of light. Soon, he would join them. "The galaxy will never be the same," he said. "No," the human agreed. "It won't. Because now it knows that humanity isn't prey. We're not victims. We're not weak little creatures to be protected or enslaved." Shen's eyes gleamed in the emergency lighting. "We're the thing that comes after the apex predator dies." The Admiral closed his eyes and waited for the end. In the distance, he could hear the sound of his ship's hull beginning to buckle under the stresses of whatever weapon the humans had used to disable it. Soon, the void would claim him. But, even in death, he found himself wondering about the implications of what had just happened. If humanity could do this to the Zephyrian Empire, the most powerful military force in the galaxy, what did that mean for everyone else? What had they unleashed upon the stars? Ambassador Veleth of the Centauri Federation tried to maintain her composure as she walked through the corridors of what had once been the Zephyrian capital ship. The massive vessel now served as humanity's mobile embassy, though calling it an embassy seemed inadequate given its obvious military capabilities. The humans had kept most of the original Zephyrian technology but had added their own modifications that made Veleth's scales prickle with unease. The ship's new human crew moved with a quiet efficiency that reminded her uncomfortably of the Zephyrians themselves. But, where the insectoid warriors had been obviously predatory, these humans seemed almost mundane. They nodded politely as she passed, offered directions when she looked lost, and generally behaved like any other species' diplomatic staff. It was their eyes that disturbed her. Every human she had encountered in the past 3 months since the fall of the Zephyrian Empire had those same eyes, cold, calculating, and utterly without illusion about the nature of galactic politics. She found Commander Chen in what had been Admiral Kefvar's private quarters. The space had been completely transformed. Gone were the trophies of conquest and displays of Zephyrian military might. In their place were simple furnishings, a few plants that Veleth recognized as being from Earth, and walls lined with what appeared to be historical documents and photographs. "Ambassador," Chen said, rising from behind a modest desk. "Thank you for accepting our invitation." Veleth studied him carefully. In person, he was even less impressive than he had appeared in the recordings that had circulated throughout the galaxy. Average height for a human, unremarkable features, wearing a simple black uniform with minimal decorations. If she had encountered him at a diplomatic function 6 months ago, she would have dismissed him as a minor functionary. Now, she knew better. This was the man who had personally infiltrated and destroyed the most powerful fleet in galactic history. This was the face of humanity's new military doctrine. "I must admit," she said, settling into the offered chair with some difficulty due to her reptilian physiology, "when the Federation received your message requesting a meeting, there was considerable debate about how to respond." "I imagine there was," Chen replied, pouring tea from a service that looked suspiciously like it had been salvaged from Earth. "The galaxy is still adjusting to recent events." Recent events. Such a casual way to describe the complete annihilation of an interstellar empire in the span of 72 hours. "Commander, I think we can dispense with diplomatic pleasantries," Veleth said. "My government wants to know what humanity's intentions are." "Your actions against the Zephyrians were comprehensive. Chen nodded, sipping his tea thoughtfully. The Federation is concerned that we might turn our attention to other targets. The thought had occurred to us, yes. For several long moments, Chen said nothing. He stood and walked to one of the photographs on the wall, a black and white image of what Veleth recognized as a human city. In the picture, the buildings were intact, the streets filled with people going about their daily lives. This was Shanghai, Chen said quietly. Population 28 million. It was one of our oldest cities, with a history spanning over 1,000 years. He touched the frame gently. The Zephyrians targeted it specifically because they knew it held cultural significance for us. They wanted to break our spirit. Veleth remained silent. She had read the reports of Earth's fall. The Zephyrians had been thorough in their brutality. Do you know what the last transmission from Shanghai was? Chen asked, turning back to her. No. A children's choir singing a lullaby. The broadcast came from a shelter deep underground where 3,000 people, mostly families with young children, had taken refuge. The Zephyrians had surrounded the shelter, and everyone inside knew they were going to die. His voice remained steady, matter of fact. Instead of panic or pleas for mercy, they chose to fill their final moments with something beautiful. Veleth felt her throat tighten. Her own species had young ones, and the image Chen painted struck at something fundamental. The Zephyrians broadcast the recording across their fleet as entertainment, Chen continued. They thought it was amusing that we would waste our final moments on such sentiment. That's horrific. Yes. It was. Chen returned to his seat. But it was also instructive. It taught us something important about the nature of this galaxy. Which was that there are species out there who see our capacity for love, for art, for beauty, as weakness to be exploited. Who view our children as acceptable casualties in their expansion plans. Chen's eyes met hers directly. We've learned that such species cannot be negotiated with, cannot be reasoned with, and cannot be trusted to coexist with others. Veleth felt a chill run down her spine. Commander, surely you don't believe all species? Of course not, he said, his tone becoming warmer. The galaxy is full of civilizations that share our basic values. Species that protect their young, that create beauty, that seek peaceful coexistence. The Centauri Federation is one such civilization. Relief flooded through her. Then, humanity has no quarrel with the Federation? None at all. In fact, we hope to strengthen our relationship with your people. You've always been fair traders, honorable in your agreements, and protective of smaller species in your sphere of influence. Then, what exactly are humanity's intentions? The entire galaxy is waiting for an answer. Chen stood again, this time moving to a large display screen that dominated one wall. With a gesture, he activated it, showing a real-time map of known space. Green markers indicated human territories, blue showed the various Federation species, yellow marked other major powers, and red showed areas of concern. Our intentions are quite simple, Ambassador. We want to ensure that what happened to Earth never happens again. To anyone. Veleth studied the display. The red markers were scattered throughout the galaxy, but she noticed they all seemed to share certain characteristics. These red zones, they're all expansionist powers. Aggressive expansionist powers, Chen clarified. Species that grow through conquest rather than cooperation. The hegemony of Krix, the Stellar Dominion, the war clans of Vorth. He highlighted each in turn. All of them follow the same pattern as the Zephyrians. They see other species as resources to be exploited or obstacles to be eliminated. And humanity intends to stop them. Permanently. The casual way he said it made Veletha's blood freeze. Commander, you're talking about a galactic war. No, Ambassador. We're talking about galactic peace. True peace, not the temporary truces that have characterized interstellar relations for the past 5 centuries. By destroying anyone who disagrees with you? Chen's expression hardened slightly. By destroying anyone who makes war against peaceful civilizations. There's a difference. Veleth stood abruptly, her diplomatic training warring with her species' survival instincts. Commander, with respect, you cannot simply appoint yourselves the galaxy's policemen. The Galactic Council failed, Chen interrupted. When the Zephyrians began their expansion, the Council imposed sanctions. Economic penalties. Strongly worded resolutions. They accomplished nothing except to give the Zephyrians time to build more warships. He was right, and Velith knew it. The Council had been paralyzed by its own bureaucracy and the competing interests of its member species. By the time they had agreed on any meaningful action, 17 star systems had fallen. So what do you propose instead? A new order. One based on a simple principle: civilizations that threaten others will be eliminated before they can cause widespread harm. And who decides which civilizations are threats? The evidence decides. Unprovoked attacks on civilian populations. Slavery. Genocide. Species that engage in such activities have forfeited their right to exist. Velith sat back down heavily. The implications were staggering. You're talking about becoming the very thing you claim to oppose. A conquering empire imposing your will on the galaxy. Are we? Chen pulled up another display, this one showing Zephyrian territories that had fallen to human forces. What do you see here, Ambassador? Velith studied the data carefully. Former Zephyrian worlds. Your forces control them now. Look closer. She enhanced the display, focusing on individual star systems. What she saw confused her. I don't understand. These worlds are governing themselves. There are no human occupation forces, no colonial administrators. Exactly. We liberated these worlds from Zephyrian rule and, then, we left. The former slave species are now free to determine their own destinies. Some have joined existing interstellar nations, others have formed new confederations. A few have chosen isolation. All were given that choice. But, why? You could have easily built an empire from the conquered territories. Because empires are inherently unstable. They require constant military force to maintain control, they breed resentment and rebellion, and eventually they collapse, usually taking half the galaxy down with them. Chen turned off the display and faced her directly. We're not trying to rule the galaxy, Ambassador. We're trying to fix it. Despite her reservations, Velith found herself intrigued. How? By removing the bad actors. The species that prey on others, that spread through violence and conquest, that treat sentient beings as resources to be harvested. Once they're gone, the peaceful civilizations can flourish. It's an interesting theory, she admitted. But, how can you be certain you won't become corrupted by power? Every empire in history has claimed noble intentions. Chen smiled for the first time since she had arrived, and, to her surprise, it seemed genuine. Because we've already had ultimate power, Ambassador. For the past 3 months, humanity has possessed the ability to conquer any civilization in the galaxy. Our technology, our tactics, our people all are capable of overwhelming any military force currently in existence. The casual confidence in his statement chilled her. You're that certain of your superiority? I am. Would you like a demonstration? Before Velith could respond, Chen activated a communication device on his desk. Bridge, this is the commander. Please show Ambassador Velith the current positions of all major fleet concentrations within 50 light-years. A three-dimensional holographic display materialized in the center of the room. Velith gasped as she recognized her own people's ships, the entire third battle fleet of the Centauri Federation, supposedly conducting routine patrols in secret deployment patterns. How are you tracking our ships? She demanded. Their positions are classified at the highest levels. Ambassador, we've been tracking every major military vessel in this sector for months. Not just yours, everyone's. Federation, Hegemony, Dominion, Independent Systems, even the remaining Council forces. More markers appeared on the display, showing the positions of hundreds of ships from dozens of different species. We know their locations, their capabilities, their mission parameters. We could neutralize any or all of them within hours. Velith stared at the display in horror. You've been spying on everyone. We've been protecting everyone. There's a difference. How is this protection? Shen gestured to a cluster of red markers near the edge of the display. Crick's hegemony battlecruisers, currently massing for an attack on the Altair colonies. The colonists don't know they're coming. The local defense forces would be overwhelmed. He touched a control, and the red markers suddenly went dark. They're not coming anymore. You destroyed them? Their engines suffered mysterious malfunctions. Navigation systems failed. Life support began experiencing problems. Nothing fatal, just enough to send them limping back to their home ports for extensive repairs that will take months to complete. Velith was beginning to understand the scope of what humanity had become. You can disable ships without destroying them? When it serves our purposes, yes. The goal isn't mass destruction, Ambassador. It's behavioral modification on a galactic scale. She stood again, pacing to the viewport that looked out on the stars. This is terrifying, Commander. You're describing a level of power that no single species should possess. I agree completely. She turned to stare at him. What? You're absolutely right. No single species should have this kind of power. Which is why we're not going to keep it indefinitely. I don't understand. Chen joined her at the viewport. Our current capabilities are extraordinary, but they're also temporary. The technology we're using, the methods we've developed, they all depend on maintaining a massive intelligence network and staying ahead of everyone else's defensive capabilities. Eventually, other species will adapt. They'll develop countermeasures, new defensive technologies, better security protocols. Our advantage will erode. Then, why reveal it to me? Because we have perhaps a decade, maybe two, before the galaxy learns to defend itself against us. We want to use that time to eliminate the worst threats and establish a new balance of power. One that doesn't depend on humanity being the strongest force in the galaxy. Velith felt her head spinning. What kind of balance? A coalition of peaceful species, working together to maintain stability. The Federation, the Peaceful Trade Alliance, the Reformed Council Worlds, and several others. Together, they would possess enough combined strength to deter any future would-be conquerors. And humanity's role in this coalition? Whatever role we're asked to play. We don't want to rule, Ambassador. We just want to make sure that no one else gets the chance to do what the Zephyrians did to Earth. She studied his face carefully, looking for any sign of deception. What she saw instead was something she hadn't expected: exhaustion. The kind of bone-deep weariness that came from carrying enormous responsibility. You're tired, she said. We all are. Do you know what it's like to hold the power of life and death over entire civilizations? To know that every decision you make could affect the fate of billions of innocent beings? Shen rubbed his eyes. We never wanted this power, Ambassador. We took it because we had to. But we'll be glad to give it up when the time comes. How can I believe that? Because of what we've already done. We could have taken over the Zephyrian territories. We could have enslaved the species that served them. We could have begun building an empire that would span the galaxy within a decade. He gestured toward the display showing the freed worlds. Instead, we gave those people their freedom and asked for nothing in return. Velith considered this. It was true that humanity's actions since the fall of the Zephyrian Empire had been surprisingly restrained. Where she had expected conquest and occupation, she had seen liberation and withdrawal. What do you want from the Federation? Partnership. Trade agreements. Cultural exchange. The same things we've always wanted. The only difference is that now we're negotiating from a position of strength. And if we refuse? Chen's expression didn't change. Then, you'll miss out on the benefits of alliance with us. We won't force you to join our coalition, Ambassador. But, we also won't protect you from other threats if you choose to remain neutral. The implication was clear. In the new galactic order humanity was creating, species would need to choose sides. There would be no room for fence-sitting when expansionist powers arose. "I need to report back to my government," she said finally. "Of course. Take all the time you need to make your decision. But don't take too long. The Stellar Dominion has been eyeing several Federation border worlds, and we'd prefer to address that situation before it becomes a crisis." As Velith made her way back through the ship's corridors, her mind raced with the implications of what she had learned. Humanity had revealed itself to be perhaps the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever known, not because of their aggression, but because of their restraint. They possessed the power to conquer everyone and, instead, chose to act as guardians. The question that would determine the fate of the galaxy was simple: could they be trusted to keep that restraint? Or would they eventually succumb to the same corruption that had claimed every other dominant power in galactic history? As her shuttle departed the human vessel, Velith found herself hoping that Chan and his people were as different from their predecessors as they claimed to be. Because if they weren't, the galaxy was about to experience a new kind of dark age, one ruled by beings who understood exactly how to destroy their enemies without appearing to be the aggressors. The thought kept her awake for the entire journey home. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the observation deck of Research Station Omega, watching the strange ship approach through the void. After 18 months as humanity's chief xenobiology advisor, she thought she had seen every type of alien vessel in the galaxy. This one was different, organic, flowing, almost alive in the way it moved through space. The eternal consciousness had finally answered humanity's call. "They're beautiful," whispered Lieutenant Morrison, one of the station's junior officers. The young man had grown up on the stories of Earth's golden age, when first contact with alien species had been met with wonder rather than weapons. Elena envied him that innocence. "Beautiful and ancient," Elena replied, checking her tablet for the incoming ship's specifications. "According to our files, the consciousness has existed for over 50,000 years. They witnessed the rise and fall of a dozen galactic civilizations. Why do you think they want to meet with us now? They've avoided contact with everyone for centuries." Elena didn't answer immediately. The truth was more complex than anything she could explain to a junior officer. The eternal consciousness hadn't just avoided contact, they had actively hidden from the galaxy's younger species, emerging only when civilizations faced extinction-level threats. The fact that they had requested this meeting suggested they viewed humanity as something unprecedented. Something dangerous. "Dr. Vasquez," came a voice from the station's communication system. "The alien vessel is requesting permission to dock. They're transmitting on every frequency simultaneously somehow. The message is addressed to you specifically." Elena sighed. 6 months ago, she had been a simple research scientist studying the ecological impacts of interstellar colonization. Then, Commander Chen had recruited her for something he called the Galaxy Project, humanity's attempt to understand and catalog every sentient species within 1,000 light-years of Earth's former location. What she had discovered in that role had changed her understanding of everything she thought she knew about galactic civilization. "Grant docking permission," she said. "And clear the main conference hall. I want minimal personnel for this meeting." An hour later, Elena found herself face-to-face with beings that challenged every assumption about the nature of intelligent life. The consciousness delegation consisted of 3 entities that seemed to exist somewhere between energy and matter, shifting, flowing forms that maintained roughly humanoid shapes but constantly flickered with internal light. The leader, if that term applied, introduced themselves as Memory of Stars, a being who claimed to have personally witnessed the birth of the current galactic civilization. Their voice came from everywhere and nowhere, a harmonious tone that seemed to bypass Elena's ears and speak directly to her mind. "Dr. Elena Vasquez of the human species," Memory of Stars said, the words accompanied by images and emotions that conveyed meaning beyond language. "We greet you with caution and curiosity." "The feeling is mutual," Elena replied, hoping her universal translator was functioning properly. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Humanity has many questions about the state of the galaxy. As do we. Your species has surprised us." The second entity, who identified themselves as Echo of Civilizations, stepped forward. In 50 millennia, we have observed the rise of 1,307 spacefaring civilizations. We have watched them grow, expand, stagnate, and, eventually fall. Your species does not follow any pattern we recognize. Elena felt a chill. The implications of that statement were enormous. What do you mean? Memory of Stars gestured, and the air between them filled with holographic displays showing the rise and fall of galactic empires across tens of thousands of years. Elena watched civilizations she had never heard of spread across the stars, reach peaks of incredible achievement, and, then, crumble into dust. All species follow the cycle, Memory of Stars explained. Birth from their homeworld, expansion through conquest or diplomacy, a period of stability and growth, then, gradual decline as they lose the drive that originally propelled them to greatness. Some cycles last millennia, others mere centuries, but all follow this pattern. The Zephyrians were near the end of their cycle, added the third entity, Keeper of Sorrows. Their expansion had slowed, their military was becoming bureaucratic, their people were growing soft. Within another century, they would have begun their decline. Other species would have risen to challenge them. Elena studied the displays, watching civilization after civilization follow the same trajectory. But, humanity doesn't fit this pattern? Your species has only existed in galactic society for 50 years, Echo of Civilizations said. Yet in that time, you have undergone transformations that typically take millennia. You were peaceful traders when you first emerged from your homeworld. After suffering massive casualties, you became the most efficient military force in galactic history. Now, you appear to be transitioning into something else entirely. Something we have never observed, Memory of Stars added. A species that deliberately chooses to limit its own power when it could easily expand without restriction. Elena felt the weight of their attention, the sense that these ancient beings were studying humanity with an intensity that bordered on concern. Is that what brought you out of hiding? Our restraint? Partly. But, more concerning is what our analysis suggests about your species' future development. Keeper of Sorrows stepped forward, and Elena felt a wave of emotion that nearly drove her to her knees. Grief, loss, and an overwhelming sadness that spoke of witnessing countless tragedies across the eons. Show me, Elena managed. The holographic display shifted, showing projections of humanity's potential future paths. Elena watched scenarios unfold, some showing humans as benevolent guardians of galactic peace, others depicting them as cold-eyed exterminators eliminating any species they deemed a threat. But, the most disturbing scenarios showed something else entirely. In 60% of our projections, Memory of Stars explained, humanity transcends physical existence entirely within the next 5 centuries. Your species shows signs of rapid evolutionary acceleration that we have only seen once before in galactic history. What happened to that species? The three entities exchanged what Elena interpreted as meaningful glances, though she wasn't sure how beings of living energy accomplished such a thing. They became us, Echo of Civilizations said quietly. We are the eternal consciousness because we are the survivors of a species that chose to abandon physical form rather than risk the cycle of rise and fall that claims all material civilizations. Elena felt her worldview cracking. You're saying humanity might evolve into beings like you? The patterns are remarkably similar, Keeper of Sorrows confirmed. Rapid technological advancement, dramatic behavioral shifts in response to existential threats, and, most significantly, the development of collective decision-making processes that prioritize long-term species survival over individual desires. The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. The Galaxy Project. Commander Chen's plan to catalog and monitor every civilization. He's not just trying to maintain peace, he's preparing for humanity's next evolutionary phase. Your leadership appears to be unconsciously following the same path we did, Memory of Stars agreed. The question is whether this transformation can be guided or if it will occur naturally regardless of conscious intention. Elena sank into one of the conference room chairs, her mind reeling. Why are you telling me this? Why not meet with Chen directly, or the Human Leadership Council? Because you are the bridge, Echo of Civilization said. Your role as xenobiology advisor places you at the intersection between humanity's current form and its understanding of other species. If humanity's transformation is to be guided rather than allowed to proceed chaotically, it will require someone who understands both what humans are now and what they might become. What would guided transformation look like? The display shifted again, showing new projections. In these scenarios, humanity maintained its physical form while developing the same expanded consciousness that characterized the eternal consciousness. They became guardians and guides for younger species while avoiding the isolation that came with complete transcendence. A hybrid path, Memory of Stars explained. Maintaining connection to material reality while expanding beyond its limitations. It would allow your species to fulfill its apparent destiny without abandoning the galaxy to another cycle of rise and fall among younger civilizations. Elena studied the projections carefully. In the guided transformation scenarios, humanity evolved into something resembling the galactic police force they were already becoming, but with the wisdom and perspective that came from expanded consciousness. They became teachers and protectors, helping other species avoid the pitfalls that led to civilizational collapse. And if we don't guide this transformation? Keeper of Sorrows provided the answer with another wave of emotion. Elena saw images of a galaxy swept clean of intelligent life, not through warfare but through humanity's gradual loss of connection to physical reality. As humans evolved beyond material concerns, they simply stopped caring about the fate of other species. The galaxy became a vast empty space populated only by transcended beings who had lost all memory of what it meant to be mortal. How long do we have? Elena asked. Based on current rates of change, the critical decision point will come within the next 50 years, Echo of Civilizations said. Your species will face a choice between transcendence and remaining bound to physical reality. Without guidance, you will likely choose transcendence and abandon the galaxy to chaos. With guidance? You could become something new. Neither purely physical nor purely transcendent, but something that bridges both states. It would be unprecedented in galactic history. Elena stood and walked to the viewport, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were patrolling trade routes, monitoring potential threats, and slowly reshaping galactic civilization according to humanity's vision of peace and order. The crews of those ships had no idea they were participating in their species' evolutionary transformation. What would you need from us to help guide this process? She asked finally. Access to your leadership. Regular communication about humanity's development. And, most importantly, your commitment to maintaining awareness of other species' needs and perspectives as your consciousness expands. Elena turned back to the three beings. And, what can you offer in return? 50,000 years of experience watching civilizations rise and fall. Knowledge of the patterns that lead to transcendence. And warnings about the pitfalls that could destroy your species before it completes its transformation. The weight of the decision pressed down on Elena's shoulders. She was being asked to serve as liaison between humanity and beings who had witnessed the entire history of galactic civilization. Her recommendations would shape not just humanity's future, but the fate of every species in the galaxy. I need to discuss this with our leadership, she said. Of course. But, remember, time is limited. The changes in your species are accelerating. Each month of delay reduces the possibility of successful guidance. As the meeting concluded and the consciousness delegation returned to their ship, Elena found herself staring at the data they had left behind. Projections, analyses, and warnings about humanity's future filled her tablet's memory. She thought about Commander Chen and his quiet confidence about humanity's role as galactic guardian. Did he know what he was leading their species toward? Was the Galaxy Project his unconscious response to evolutionary pressures he didn't fully understand? Elena activated her communication system and requested immediate transport to the human command station. Chen needed to know about this conversation. More importantly, humanity needed to make a choice about its future before that choice was made for them by forces beyond their control. As her shuttle departed the research station, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that she had just witnessed a pivotal moment in galactic history. The eternal consciousness had hidden from younger species for millennia, emerging only when civilizations faced extinction. Their willingness to break that pattern and offer direct guidance to humanity suggested something unprecedented was happening. The galaxy's newest apex predator was about to evolve into something that had never existed before, a transcendent species that chose to remain connected to physical reality. Whether that evolution would bring peace or chaos to the stars remained to be seen. But, for the first time since Earth's fall, Elena felt a spark of genuine hope. Humanity had survived the destruction of their homeworld, transformed themselves into an unstoppable military force, and somehow retained enough wisdom to limit their own power when they could have easily conquered the galaxy. Maybe, just maybe, they could survive their next transformation as well. The future of every sentient being in the galaxy depended on it.